Today we're going to do a product demonstration on the Owens Corning Cool Roof product. There are three primary components to a roof. One of them is obviously the shingle or the tile that would be the top, the top layer. The second and most important component of a roof would be the underlayment. And then the third would be either called the decking or the sheathing, which would be the wood. We have partnered with Owens Corning, which is the premium manufacturer of roofing materials in North America. The company's been in business for over 75 years. It is the most recognized brand in the residential roofing industry. They're the ones that invented fiberglass, used the very first time in automobiles back in 1953. What we offer is their duration shingle, which comes with a 50-year material warranty, which is the best warranty you could get from Owens Corning. So JNR Home Improvement, what we are dedicated to, again, is the highest quality product and material on the market. Now, as I mentioned before, there are a number of different elements to the roofing product. We talked about the shingles. Now, not only are there the regular shingles, but we also have what's called the ridge cap shingle. And you can probably see here that when the roof comes to its peak, there has to be something that goes over the top of that ridge, or what they call the ridge cap. And most companies are basically using just one of the shingles that they kind of bend over and nail down. And it's really not designed for that purpose. These are designed to be flat, the regular shingles are. Anytime you get a curvature, which is what's designed to go over the ridge cap, as you can see, it's much thicker and it's designed with a bend in play. That way you don't have the creases. When you bend the shingle, it actually separates the substrate from the granules and invites water penetration. So you've got the ridge shingle, then you've got the ventilation component of it. And as you can see here in this illustration, how there's gaps in between the sheathing and the underlayment. That allows the roof to breathe. Now, what happens with a typical roof is that it gets heat from both sides. So you get your tremendous heat coming from the outside, and then obviously heat rises from the inside. And what you get is what we call a double bake effect, which basically is cooking that roofing material. In some cases, in a hot summer day, especially up here in the Antelope Valley, you'd be looking at upwards of 200 degrees. Now, the other component that we obviously are dealing with is the actual shingle. Now, Owens Corning uses a much thicker shingle than a lot of the inexpensive materials that you would buy at, let's say, a Home Depot or a Lowe's. And for those of you who've purchased homes in the last, let's say 15, 20, 25 years, those roofs were only designed to last maybe 10, 15 years. And the reason for that is what's called the underlayment, which is by far the most important element of a roof. The underlayment is the moisture membrane or the moisture barrier that prevents water from getting into the wood or into the sheathing. Most inexpensive roofs use essentially a felt paper material, which is really no different than construction paper that's dipped in oil and tar. And you can see that it's very brittle. It tears just like paper. And so the problem with that is that over a period of time, with the heat and the cold and the expansion and the contraction due to the external elements, this becomes an extraordinarily brittle material that essentially disintegrates. The underlayment that Owens Corning uses is a fiberglass underlayment, and the difference is that this is made out of hundreds and thousands of different fibers woven together that acts as a much more effective repellent. So the layers of the roof are it starts with the wood, with the sheathing. This is actually called OSB board, which is a much more rigid type of composite board that the premium roofers are using. On top of the decking comes the underlayment, right? So you've got the decking and the underlayment, and then on top of the underlayment goes the shingle, okay? So you've got really a three-part component. On the top, you've got your shingle, You've got your fiberglass underlayment that you can see is very durable and tight. It doesn't tear, it doesn't rip, it won't penetrate any water. And then you get your decking or your sheathing. The process with roofing is a multiple step process. So the first thing we're gonna do is when we come out to your property, an exterior inspection, which would be to check to see how many layers of shingle you have currently. And we are actually going to get up on the roof. It's really the only way that we can identify some of the problem. The other way that we're gonna measure to get precise dimensions is we use a satellite imaging software, which basically takes a satellite image of your roof, allows us to do a very, very accurate measure, and that's gonna give us the ability to give you the proper price. Not only are we gonna come out and do an inspection, we're gonna get up on the roof, we're gonna look to see how many layers are already there. We're going to inspect the edges. A lot of times you've got damaged fascia board. The water is dripped under to the eaves and the soffit. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to inspect the decking. Typically that is done from the inside. We would get up into the attic with a ladder and we would take very high resolution pictures. And what we're looking for is water, dark patches of water on the wood. And that typically is a newer leak. Anything that's older would be white and crystallized. Then we get up on the top of the roof. In order to inspect the decking, what we're gonna do from the exterior, peel back the existing shingle so that we can get back and identify the wood. Most of the time we find about 20 to 30% of the decking needs to be replaced. In an older home, we probably would have to replace the entire decking. The other issue that we find would be the poor ventilation. And the poor ventilation would be because a proper ridge cap was not installed. And as you can see here, when you've got to have some gaps in between the ridge cap and the underlayment to allow the air to breathe. When the heat comes from the inside up through the attic, it needs to be able to escape. That's why you see a lot of these kind of half circle vents, and you get the whirly-birds on top of the attic. Those are obviously for ventilation purposes. The third problem that we see is what we call granule loss. An inexpensive roof or an inexpensive shingle is going to have tremendous loss of granules. Now the problem with that is that once the granules have eroded, which is really the layer that repels the water, you get much more water infiltration and moisture that gets absorbed, gets through the shingle, goes through the inexpensive underlayment, the felt dipped in tar and oil, and then obviously gets in and starts to affect your decking. Now, the other thing, as I mentioned also, is the exposed fiberglass. We normally would see that at the peak of the ridge cap, but again, on an older roof, 15, 20, 25-year-old roof, that was really only designed to last 10 or 15 years, you're gonna see tremendous fiber exposure. Any erosion in the shingle is gonna increase what? Water infiltration. The other thing that you're gonna deal with is buckling, curling, and cupping. And what that is again, an inexpensive material over a period of time is not gonna lay flat on the sheathing or on the decking. And then the other thing that we find is literally missing shingles. That an inexpensive roof that isn't bound tight or isn't nailed down properly, the shingles over a period of time, they just blow off. You'd be shocked that you get high winds, especially up here in Antelope Valley where we get really high winds. It's very, very common for shingles to literally blow off. So when we get up on the roof, all we basically see is the underlayment, and it's not the good underlayment, it's the bad underlayment. So all you're just seeing basically is just paper. Well, how do you think that that's going to repel water? It's not. The other thing that we're looking for is mold, wood rot, and again, we mentioned the granule loss. Well, what is wood rot going to do? It is going to deteriorate and weaken the structure. A roof is heavy. So if you damage and deteriorate the overall strength and rigidity of the building material, it's very likely that you could have some structural damage. And then again, we're not looking at $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 roof. We're looking at a $80,000 to maybe $140,000 overhaul. Now, again, one of the things that we talked about before is really the three components. We've got the seal, we've got what we call the defend, and we've got the breathe, all right? So the seal would be the ice and the water barrier, which is the underlayment that we talked about. The defend is gonna be the shingle, right? It's gonna be the hip ridge or the ridge cap, and then it's also gonna be the thicker, more durable shingle. And then the breathing component of it would all be basically on the ridge caps, where you've got the ability for the air to escape. And then you'd also, we install a certain number of attic vents. What you're looking for from that standpoint is that once we've done the deck replacement, then it's time to go with the deck defense, okay? Now, the deck defense, again, is the Owens Corning fiberglass underlayment. And this is gonna go on top of the decking. Once we get through the underlayment process, then we're gonna use the Owens Corning shingles. One of the things that I do wanna point out, it's called the Owens Corning Sure Nail system. You can see here very clearly that it basically gives the guys a much easier place to put the nails. So that Sure Nail system is super important. Now, the type of shingles that are out there, we use the Owens Corning Duration line, which is the highest quality product that Owens Corning sells. So not only does it have the highest water repelling agent to it, but it also acts as a heat reflector. This is a critical component to the Owens Corning cool roof. The cool roof is going to reflect the ultraviolet rays back into the Earth's atmosphere, which is going to cut down on the heat anywhere from 50 to 70 degrees. As you can imagine, that has a tremendous effect. What we're going to do is we're going to install dormer vents rather than whirlybirds. The dormer vents are what's going to help ventilate the attic for you. And depending upon the size of the roof, you get a certain number of them. Typically, we're going to install anywhere from 5 to 7 dormer vents. Those would be included in your price. The first day is going to be the tear off. That next day, we're going to do the wood replacement. So that would typically be day 2. On that day, we're also going to do the weather lock and the deck defense, with obviously the underlayment. At that point, we're also going to do the starter shingle and the edge metal, which would be on day 2, sometimes pushing over into day 3. And then we're going to install the proper venting in the ridge caps, and that completes the project. It's typically on a good sized roof, we're looking at anywhere from 3 to 4 days before we are completely finished. And we've been in business a number of years up here in Antelope Valley. We've won a number of Antelope Valley best awards, and you can really feel safe and secure that JNR is going to cover all the bases and take real good care of you. With a roof, it's really not something you want to cut corners on. It is the single most protective agent for most people's biggest investment. You got a problem with your roof, it's going to cause a problem with everything, and the consequential damage of ignoring the roof and allowing the water to get into your walls, the damage to the rafters, the damage to the drip edge, all that is just going to end up costing you, again, is instead of a $25, $30, maybe $35,000 roof, you're going to be looking at an $80 to $100 to $120,000 complete rebuild. So again, my name is Eric Spiegel. We look forward to meeting you and providing you the finest roofing experience that you can have in the home improvement business. Thank you very much.